Part 1. Jackson McAllister had always believed that a man's life could be measured in acres of land and the strength of his herd. For 35 years, he had built his cattle empire from the ground up, turning a small patch of rugged Texas prairie into a sprawling ranch that stretched as far as the eye could see. But despite the vastness of his property, the house at the center of it all felt painfully empty. Since the death of his wife, Evelyn, 3 years ago, the rooms had become silent witnesses to his loneliness. The grand dining hall that had once hosted raucous Sunday dinners now stood bare, the kitchen counters unused, and the air heavy with memories. Jackson had tried to fill the emptiness with work, hours in the fields, managing the herd, handling contracts, but the quiet had a way of creeping in at night, relentless and suffocating. He didn't want to admit it, but he was struggling with even the smallest daily tasks. Cooking, for instance, had gone from a leisurely pleasure he shared with Evelyn to an obligation he avoided at all costs. Most nights, he found himself eating cold sandwiches or whatever he could heat up quickly, and the thought of preparing a proper meal was exhausting. That was why he had finally posted the ad, a simple notice seeking a cook. He had made it clear in the posting, he needed someone responsible, skilled in the kitchen, and able to keep the household in order. Nothing more, no companionship, no emotional entanglement. Just a cook, that was all. When the responses began arriving, most were unremarkable. Applicants with solid resumes, polite emails, a few phone interviews, but nothing that struck him as unusual or interesting. He expected the position to be filled by someone competent, someone who could whip up a steak dinner or bake a loaf of bread without fuss. But he did not expect Maria Lopez. Maria was not a professional cook with years of restaurant experience, at least not formally. She had learned in a far different way, through necessity, through care, and through love. Her small kitchen in her modest apartment had always been filled with the aromas of spices and simmering sauces, each meal prepared with a devotion that made food feel like more than sustenance. And she did it while raising her young son, Diego, alone, carrying the weight of her responsibilities with quiet dignity. When she saw the ad for Jackson's ranch, something inside her stirred. The position was unconventional, yes, but it offered stability, a chance to provide a secure life for Diego, and maybe, just maybe, a chance at a fresh start. The morning she arrived at the ranch, Jackson barely knew what to expect. He had prepared the kitchen for a brief interview, perhaps a short taste test, nothing more. When the double doors opened, he was struck immediately by Maria's presence. She carried herself with an effortless confidence, yet there was a softness in her expression, a warmth in her eyes that immediately set her apart. Her dark hair was neatly tied back, and a simple apron covered her clothing. But it was not her appearance alone that commanded attention, it was the way she entered the space, careful but unafraid, her steps measured yet light, as if she belonged in the house already. And then he noticed Diego. The little boy clung shyly to her hand, peeking around her legs, his wide brown eyes drinking in every detail of the ranch house. Jackson felt a strange pang in his chest, an unfamiliar tug that he couldn't immediately name. Diego's innocence, his curiosity, the way he hesitated before speaking, everything about him seemed to demand protection and care, yet also radiated a warmth Jackson hadn't realized he was missing. "Good morning, Mr. McAllister," Maria said, her voice calm but firm, carrying the kind of confidence that made Jackson sit up straighter. "I'm here about the cook position." She smiled politely, a hint of nervousness flickering across her features, but it was quickly replaced by composure. Jackson noticed that she spoke with intention, carefully choosing words that conveyed respect without pretension. He found himself momentarily lost for words, which was unusual for a man accustomed to commanding boardrooms and managing ranch hands. "Yes," he finally said, clearing his throat. I'm Jackson McAllister. You're here for the cook position, correct?" "That's right," Maria replied. "I can manage the household as well, if needed. Cooking isn't just about following recipes, it's about creating a home, and I understand that." Part 2. Weeks passed on the ranch, and what had begun as a professional arrangement slowly evolved into something far more profound. Maria had settled seamlessly into her role, not only managing the kitchen with effortless skill but also bringing a sense of life back into the house that Jackson had long forgotten. The aromas of freshly baked bread and simmering stews now filled the air, replacing the cold emptiness that had haunted the rooms since Evelyn's passing. But it wasn't just the food that transformed the house, it was Maria herself. She moved with quiet confidence, tending to chores, organizing supplies, and creating order in ways that Jackson had never even considered. The walls seemed warmer, the halls brighter, and Jackson found himself looking forward to returning home after long days in the fields, anticipating the comforting presence of Maria and the cheerful chatter of Diego. Diego, too, had adapted quickly to ranch life. He took to the wide open spaces as if he had been born there, his laughter echoing across the pastures as he chased after the cattle or rode in the back of Jackson's truck. Jackson had never considered himself a particularly patient man, but he found himself softening in the boy's presence. He would teach Diego how to saddle a horse, how to mend fences, and even how to handle the stubborn cattle that refused to cooperate. Diego's innocence and curiosity reminded Jackson of what it had felt like to have someone depend on him completely, not as an employee, not as a friend, but as family. It was during one of those long, sun-drenched afternoons that Jackson began to recognize a deeper change in himself. He and Maria were repairing a section of fence that had been damaged in a recent storm. They worked side by side, their hands occasionally brushing against each other as they lifted heavy posts and tightened loose bolts. Jackson found himself noticing things he hadn't before, the way her hair caught the sunlight, the determination in her eyes, the subtle smile that appeared when she teased him about his stubborn insistence on doing things the hard way. "Jackson, if you'd let me hold the post while you hammer, we'd be done twice as fast," Maria said, her tone gentle but firm. "I know," he admitted, a small grin tugging at the corners of his mouth. "But then I wouldn't get the satisfaction of thinking I did it all myself." She laughed, a soft, melodic sound that made something in Jackson's chest stir. "You're impossible," he chuckled, but beneath the humor, he felt a strange warmth, a connection that went beyond mere companionship. He found himself seeking opportunities to work alongside her, to watch her move with ease and confidence, to hear her laugh. Each day, the lines between employer and employee blurred, replaced by something neither of them dared to name just yet. At night, after the chores were done and Diego was tucked safely into bed, Jackson would sit in the kitchen, quietly observing Maria as she cleaned or prepared for the next day. He realized that he had come to depend on her presence in ways he hadn't anticipated. Her laughter and conversation filled a void he hadn't known existed, and he felt a longing to share more than just meals or tasks. He wanted to know her thoughts, her fears, her dreams. And though he tried to suppress it, he caught himself imagining a life where Maria and Diego were always there, a life where the house was never empty again. Maria, too, felt the subtle shift in their relationship. She noticed the way Jackson lingered near her in the kitchen, the small gestures of care, a hand lightly resting on her shoulder, a plate of her favorite coffee waiting for her in the morning, a gentle smile at an ordinary joke. She hadn't expected to feel anything beyond professional respect, but Jackson's presence awakened feelings she hadn't anticipated. She found herself sharing stories of her life, her hopes for Diego, the small victories and struggles of single motherhood, and she noticed that Jackson listened, truly listened, with patience, empathy, and genuine interest. Part 3. The turning point came sooner than Jackson had expected, on a crisp autumn morning when the town's annual harvest festival brought life, laughter, and music to the nearby square. Jackson had been reluctant to attend at first. The idea of stepping out of the ranch, mingling with strangers, and showing a softer, more personal side of himself felt uncomfortable. He was a cattle baron, not a socialite, and the thought of being judged by others made him tense. Yet Maria had insisted, gently teasing him about his stubbornness, and Diego had practically begged to go, his small hands tugging at Jackson's sleeve. The festival was a riot of colors, aromas, and sounds. Stalls of homemade pies, fresh cider, and handcrafted goods lined the square, and children ran freely, their laughter mingling with the lively tunes of a local band. Maria navigated the crowd with ease, Diego skipping happily beside her, and Jackson couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. Watching her interact with the vendors, offering warm smiles and polite conversation, he saw not just a capable woman but a person whose presence lit up the world around her. As the day unfolded, Jackson found himself relaxing in ways he hadn't imagined possible. He laughed at Diego's clumsy attempts to win a ring toss, bought caramel apples for both mother and son, and even joined in the folk dance at Maria's encouragement. At first, he was stiff and awkward, but as Maria's hand found his, warm and steady, he felt his inhibitions melt. Her touch was simple, almost casual, yet it carried a weight of comfort and reassurance that made him realize just how much he wanted her in his life, not merely as a housekeeper or caretaker, but as something far deeper. During a quiet moment, they stepped away from the bustling crowd and found themselves near a small wooden bridge overlooking the river that ran behind the square. Diego had run ahead, his laughter echoing across the water, leaving Jackson and Maria alone under the soft glow of late afternoon sunlight. Jackson turned to her, feeling a mixture of fear and anticipation. "Maria," he began, his voice unusually soft. I didn't expect this. I didn't expect you or Diego to become such a big part of my life so quickly." Maria met his gaze, her eyes reflecting a mixture of curiosity and caution. "Jackson, I didn't expect it either," she admitted. "I came here thinking I'd just work for you, maybe find a little stability for Diego, but something about this place, about you, it feels different." He took a deep breath, the weight of his emotions pressing against him. I haven't allowed myself to feel this way since Evelyn died. But being with you, seeing Diego, I realize that I don't want to go back to the way things were. I don't want to be alone anymore." Maria's eyes glistened with unshed tears, and she reached out, placing her hand gently over his. "Jackson, I feel the same. I've been trying to protect my heart, trying to make sure Diego has stability first. But being with you, it feels like home. It feels right." In that moment, the air seemed to shimmer with possibility. Jackson felt a surge of relief and joy, a long-suppressed hope finally breaking free. He pulled her into a gentle embrace, careful yet intimate, and Maria rested her head against his chest, letting herself savor the rare sense of security and belonging. Diego returned just then, breathless and excited from his adventures at the festival. Seeing his mother and Jackson together, he ran into their arms, and Jackson scooped him up with a laugh, feeling the warmth of family he hadn't known he was missing. The three of them stood there for a moment, a tableau of newfound love, trust, and connection, the river glinting behind them like a promise of brighter days ahead. From that day on, Jackson's ranch was no longer just a sprawling property or a symbol of hard work and loss, it was a home filled with laughter, love, and life. Maria's presence transformed it, and Diego's energy brought a joy Jackson had long thought impossible. Together, they navigated the rhythms of ranch life, sharing chores, meals, and quiet evenings under the stars. Jackson found himself planning for a future that included Maria in every moment, imagining holidays, birthdays, and ordinary days spent together as a family. It wasn't just that he had found a cook, he had found a partner, a mother for his surrogate family, and a reminder that love often arrives unexpectedly. Jackson realized that life's most profound changes sometimes come quietly, in the form of a single mother and her child walking through your door. And as he watched Maria and Diego laughing together on the porch one evening, he understood fully that this was more than fate, it was a new beginning, a second chance at happiness, and the fulfillment of a home restored. If you like, I can also create hyper-realistic image prompts for all three parts, so you could visualize this story scene by scene. This would make it perfect for thumbnails or illustrations. Do you want me to do that next?